I'd like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for today, March 23rd, 2021. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representatives Campbell, Camper, Crawford, Faison, Freeman, Gantz, Garrett, Gillespie, Hawk, Hicks, Lamar, Lamberth, Lynn, Miller, Ogle, Sexton, Shaw, Sparks, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Zachary. Vice Chairman Baum, Chairman Hazelwood. Madam Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are there any personal orders or announcements? Seeing none, we have 12 bills on our calendar today, and after hearing those bills, we will go into a budget hearing from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. So first, we're going to take up our calendar. Item number 1 on our calendar, House Bill 786 by Leader Lamberth. Leader Lamberth, if you would, don't mind present that from the well, if you would. We have a motion and a second on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. And there should be 2 amendments that are traveling with the bill from the other committees.
They are traveling with.
Thank you. And Madam Chairman, if I may, as amended, what this bill does is it takes penalties off of individuals that would be eligible to get a carry permit right now. We're not going to put those folks in jail for carrying their firearm if they would be eligible to carry a firearm or to actually carry a firearm, possess a firearm, and get a permit now. Right now, they risk jail time if they simply haven't gotten the permit. But we're also going to drastically increase the penalty, as you can see from the fiscal note, which I know is the bulk of what this committee evaluates. Most of this fiscal note is not from a reduction in fees for carry permits, because our permit process will still be in place. We will still have our permit process. Most of us will still have permits for both reciprocity and because we will desire to have a permit. So the permit process is still in place. But the bulk of this fiscal note is because of the increased penalties against bad guys with firearms. So for instance, one of the penalties that is critical that I think we put in the law that this bill accomplishes is that if someone steals a firearm right now, in most instances, that's a misdemeanor. The firearm is valued at less than $1,000. And it's a smack on the wrist. It's a very low penalty. If this bill passes, and I hope that it does, stealing a firearm will be a felony in the state of Tennessee, and it will carry a 180-day mandatory minimum. The vast majority of our crimes that happen in our urban areas are committed by individuals that cannot legally purchase a firearm, and they are illegally purchasing those firearms that have been stolen from other individuals. This goes right at the heart of that issue. So with that, Madam Chairman, I know there will be probably quite a bit of debate and questions, and there are probably some testimony, but that's the gist of what the bill does. It keeps our permit process in place, but it does take penalties off of law-abiding citizens who could obtain a permit and are eligible now but have not, and vastly increases penalties on felons and those that are misusing firearms.
Thank you, Leader Lambert, for that explanation. And as you mentioned, we do have a request for testimony. So without objection, we're going to go out of session. And I'm going to ask Kathy Barnett, who's representing Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, to come forward. And as I hope we conveyed to anyone asking to speak, we're limiting speakers to 3 minutes, and we're asking that because this is Finance Committee that you focus on fiscal issues. With that, Ms. Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you. Let me put this down. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Barnett, representing Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, Tennessee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you in opposition to House Bill 786 that calls for permitless carry. Like all Americans, we honor the Constitution and, as required by the Second Amendment, support well-regulated gun ownership. We support our permitting systems that require background checks and gun safety training for people who wish to carry firearms in public spaces. I would like to open by reading the Fiscal Review Committee's summary of the governor's budget as it pertains to permitless carry. Quote, "The governor's proposed budget recognizes a recurring increase in state expenditures of $17.7 million a recurring decrease in revenue to the Handgun Permit Division of $2.4 million and a recurring decrease in revenue to the TBI of $469,000, unquote. Let's be clear, these are state taxpayer dollars, $17.7 million that could go to our school teachers, small businesses, and frontline workers. Instead, our elected officials want to use these state taxpayer dollars to satisfy the gun lobby. When we should be helping Tennesseans, this bill does the opposite, as it will. Quote, increase in-state incarceration expenditures by an estimated $12.3 million, unquote. That means 69% of the proposed $17.7 million going toward locking Tennesseans up. Supporters of the permitless carry will lead you to believe that this legislation will not impact our permitting system or the revenue generated from it, because the governor is allocating state taxpayer dollars to plug any gaps. As the Fiscal Review Committee found, quote, of the states that have switched to constitutional carry in the past 6 months, there has been an average decline of 19.5% in criminal background checks requests for those specific states. Therefore, it can be reasonably estimated that there will be a reduction of approximately 20% in new and renewal enhanced handgun carry permit and concealed handgun carry permit applications each year, quote, unquote. It's time for this to stop. Permitless carry will increase the number of people carrying loaded guns in public because this law incentivizes it. Gun violence costs Tennessee $9 billion each year, of which $433.2 million is paid by taxpayers.
Ms. Barnett, you have 30 seconds.
At an average cost of $1,346 per person each year. Tennessee has the 8th highest per person cost of gun violence in the United States, not to mention the negative impact gun violence can have on our business community. We know that communities that experience gun violence are less likely to be hubs for economic growth and commerce and face lower property values, fewer business startups, and loss of jobs. The bottom line is permitless carry is bad for Tennessee. It costs too much in lives and dollars. Please put public safety first and vote against 786.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there questions of Mrs. Barnett? Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you, Ms. Barnett, for being here. In your research and your statements, you mentioned $9 billion. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, sir. If I said that, it was, I'd have to go back and look.
Right.
It was in the fiscal summary under the bill. All of this information came from that.
Representative Miller.
And the $20 million would be lost revenue to the state of Tennessee. $20 million.
Yes, sir.
And that would be recurring
Yes, sir.
dollars.
Each year.
Representative Miller.
You didn't mention this, but in your research, did it show you the number of law enforcement agencies in the state that doesn't support this legislation, from the FBI to the TBI to police associations, sheriff's association, even the DEA? Does your research shows that every law enforcement agency in the state is opposed to this legislation?
Yes, sir. They are.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Barnett.
Ms. Barnett. Seeing none, thank you so much for being here today. We admire your passion and your concern, and with that, we will be back in session. We're now back in session. We're on House Bill 786. I have a list of questions beginning with you, Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. And get my harness off here. Thanks so much. And to our leader, certainly, I want to begin by just briefly saying I'm certainly for having the opportunity to have the constitutional right to carry. And I do publicly want to say that I own a gun. So I'm not against guns, but I do have some concerns about the legislation. I want to start by just asking you, because of the laws that we already have in place, what exactly are we doing for our citizens other than just not requiring them to pay for the permit?
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And again, the permit process stays in place with this bill. They would still need to pay for the permit. There have been bills in years past. In fact, I've carried one that would make the permit process free. I think it should be, but that's not this bill. What we are doing in this bill, again, if someone is currently eligible to obtain a permit, they are legally able to possess that gun in their house, their car, their boat, their bicycle, their motorcycle, their friend's business, boat, car, house, motorcycle. They can legally possess that gun there. But we currently criminalize their behavior the moment they walk in between any one of those areas. So if someone is legally allowed to possess their gun in their car right now, and they've not gone through the process to get a permit, eligible to get one, not a convicted felon, not been convicted of stalking or domestic assault or mentally committed, none of those things. All those protections are still in this bill. So a law-abiding citizen who can legally have their gun in their car and legally have it in their house, but if they walk between those two areas, they could go to jail right now. This takes that penalty off the books, and it increases the penalty on felons and possessions of guns, on individuals that are using a gun in commission of a felony, on those that steal guns, and that's the $12 million. We're going to lock up the bad guys and not lock up the good guys.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I get all of that, and I mean, a lot of things that you're saying make a lot of good sense, but I think here's where I'm a little confused, because when I was lobbied on this, the only thing the lobbyists could say to me was, we just cannot keep penalizing people's constitutional rights to practice Second Amendment or to carry a gun. And I get that, but to me, that's kind of piecemeal, because we are penalizing them in voting and coming to the Capitol after a certain hour, freedom of speech, and a lot of other ways. So can we, I guess what I'm confused about is, if we're going to give people freedom of speech or Second Amendment rights, why not give them full right to vote without having a photo ID? That's where I'm confused, is we're giving them the right to do one thing, but we're not giving them the right to do the other. And I will say this, if I thought we could, I'd have brought the bill. Can you speak to that, sir?
Leader Lamberth.
There are multiple different areas that you and I both agree that we should expand the individual freedoms of Tennesseans and of Americans in general. This bill expands their freedom in dealing with the Second Amendment. Now, there are multiple areas that you just mentioned that we can have a conversation on other bills, and many of those I may support, because if it's expanding freedom, then by and large, I'm in favor of it. But this deals specifically with Second Amendment rights and expanding the freedoms of any law-abiding American, and specifically any Tennessean, in this bill. And
Madam Chair, this is last.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to, because I've been wrestling with this all day long, I'm trying to figure out, what am I doing for my constituents to make things any better, other than one thing you said, that one middle ground place where, because right now, if it's posted, you still can't carry the gun, right? Would that be correct?
In the amendment on this bill, you have to be lawfully present. So, I mean, if someone in their private residence or business has prohibited you from carrying a firearm in there, this bill will not give you the right to trample on their private property rights. All of that stays exactly as it is in the law right now. But it does protect, again, the government from locking you up just for exercising your Second Amendment rights for people that would be eligible for a permit right now. Again, these are law-abiding citizens that are lawfully in possession of that firearm. These are folks that could get a permit and simply have chosen not to. And we are literally just taking the criminal penalty off of their backs and making sure that they're not incarcerated for what most of the time is an innocent mistake. I mean, they're literally transporting their firearm from one place to the other where they could lawfully have it. And wind up falling into a trap where in the statute right now, they can go to jail. And we're taking that out of the bill. And again, inserting into the code a significant increase in penalties on folks that are stealing firearms or felons in possession and everything else.
Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Leader, thank you. Actually, I got my handgun carry permit for the exact reason that you listed, because I was afraid that I would get pulled over or something in between my home and going to practice. But I have a couple of kind of technical questions on this. One is, when you're saying that if someone is caught and they actually shouldn't have been able to get a permit today, or in this bill, it's a Class B misdemeanor. What is it today?
Mr. Lambert.
It depends on why they're prohibited from being able to get a permit. So there are a couple of instances where someone would not be, a felon in possession of a firearm, but they might have been convicted of DUI or stalking or domestic assault. Those preclude you from being able to get a permit currently. Those prohibitions are still in this bill. And as you mentioned, it's a B misdemeanor. But if you're a felon in possession of a firearm, the penalty can be felony offenses and you could serve some significant time. So it all depends on what the prohibition is. If it's a mental health issue, whether it's a felony, whether it's a misdemeanor conviction that you have, whatever is prohibiting you, an illegal immigrant cannot constitutional carry and cannot get a carry permit. That permit, obviously, as you know, is a valid form of photo identification. So an illegal immigrant cannot get that permit. In this bill, they would not be able to constitutionally carry. But so it's a variety of penalties, but by and large, this bill leaves the penalties in place that were those misdemeanor penalties, kind of strikes the middle ground there, but again, vastly increases the penalties on felons and thieves.
Representative Freeman.
Just so I'm clear, and I have one more quick question after that. So the felony, this doesn't lower the offense to all of them to a Class B. It just sets the bottom on the lowest offenses to a Class B misdemeanor.
Leader Lambert.
Yes, that's correct.
And Representative Freeman, your last question.
Thank you very much. The second question is, and this has been asked by several people around here, today, when you come through the front door, you go through a metal detector. My understanding is the guards check to see whether or not you have a lawful permit, and if you do, they allow you to enter with that permit. This could theoretically allow somebody that is not lawfully permitted, would not be lawfully permitted, to walk into this building with a firearm. Are we going to ask the security guards and the troopers down at the front desk to do the background check on everybody when they come in, or are they just going to be allowed to enter? Are we going to remove the metal detectors?
Leader Lambert.
Again, there's nothing in this bill that actually addresses that circumstance. That's something to take up with both the Speaker of the House and of the Senate. That was a decision that is made. I mean, they're elected by us, and then they make the determination on, and particularly in this building, what restrictions would be applicable in that scenario. There's simply nothing in this bill that would change that. So there was another bill several years ago that made it very clear that if you're going to prohibit someone from bringing a firearm into an area, then you have to have, an individual there that's doing a bag check and doing an actual, has a metal detector of some sort. It doesn't have to be necessarily the large type, but it has to have some sort of metal detector there. And so we have that here, and both speakers can make that determination with consultation with the body, but there's nothing in this bill that would change that previous law indicating what areas are allowed or not allowed to even prohibit individuals from carrying firearms, but it would be a decision of both the body and the speakers.
Thank you.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Leader Lambert, would you agree that you and I and every member of this committee have taken an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States?
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes.
Would you also agree that the Second Amendment of our Constitution is one of the enumerated rights that we already have given by God according to the Constitution? It just enumerates some of those rights, and that one specifically, and it says, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It says we already have the right to keep and bear arms. It just says we shall not infringe upon that. Would you also agree that what we're doing here is taking an infringement of that right off of the books?
Leader Lambert.
We are, again, increasing the freedom of individuals, and we are certainly taking off the books an infringement on someone's rights because, I mean, putting someone in jail definitely deters many of their rights. So by expanding their Second Amendment right in this instance, by taking a jailable offense off the books, you are taking honest, everyday law-abiding citizens who are exercising that Second Amendment right, as you said so eloquently there, that is provided for by God himself and by the Constitution and Bill of Rights. I mean, it is making sure that it is not a criminal penalty for them to exercise their Second Amendment right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Miller, I believe you had a follow-up question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Leader, thank you. I want to go back to your somewhat of a narrow example you gave of me as a permit holder and the individual that currently doesn't have a permit, but they are eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Under this bill, you mentioned that they could go from their car to their home, not be harassed or arrested. As a permit holder, can I walk out of my front door with my weapon on me and walk in the neighborhood?
Leader Lambert.
Yes.
Would that be concealed or open carry?
Leader Lambert.
Yes. It's either.
Open meaning visible.
Leader Lambert.
Yes. That's the current law, that a permit holder can carry either concealed or open.
Can I have that weapon in my hand?
Leader Lambert.
I will tell you, in my personal opinion, as an attorney, while not giving you free legal advice, I would highly recommend you not do that. You are starting to get into the realm where you are potentially committing either reckless endangerment or aggravated assault. And I can tell you that if an officer sees you walking down the road with your gun in your hand, then you have crossed into an entirely different zone where you are potentially opening yourself up to being arrested for aggravated assault or reckless endangerment. It is absolutely not something that I would advise in any instance for anyone to do. Not to mention the fact that if you are carrying your firearm in your hand in a way that you are, for all appearances, ready to fire that firearm, you are also taking your own life in your hands from another lawful carry individual who may very well perceive you to be a threat and would potentially be within their rights, if they objectively perceive you as a threat, to act upon that threat. So no, sir, there is in no way, shape, form, or fashion any way that I would recommend that you carry that firearm in your hand.
Representative Miller, if we could conclude this running debate, please.
All due respect, Madam Chair, it's not a running debate. My question, he answered it. My last question, and I mentioned this to Ms. Barnett, this legislation, is it any law enforcement agency in this state that supports this legislation? And I named several of them, FBI, TBI.
Leader Lambert.
Yes, hundreds of law enforcement officers and agencies throughout this state support this legislation. The groups of individuals that have testified have said collectively that they oppose it on certain philosophical grounds. But when you talk to both individual officers, individual sheriffs, individual police chiefs, individual just Americans, Tennesseans, yes, absolutely, many of them support this legislation. I would recommend that you talk to many of your local officers in your own neighborhoods and districts, because this in itself is one of those crimes that every officer that I speak with anyways hates charging somebody with this, because they know that they are literally taking someone who is a law-abiding citizen, who is lawfully allowed to have their weapon, and not only just under the Constitution, but under our laws, could have their weapon just a few feet away in their car and it's legal, but they've stepped out and they didn't have a permit, eligible for one. Again, the exact people that are eligible for a permit are the ones we are taking the criminal penalties off of. And I've never met an officer that is enthusiastic about making that charge, because they know that person could have gotten a permit and simply had not done so yet.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions for the sponsor? The previous question has been called. Any objections? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 876, House Bill 786, moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. The ayes have it. House Bill 786 moves on to calendar and rules. If you'd like to be recorded as a no, please see the clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you, Leader Lamberth. We're now on item 2 on our calendar, House Bill 53 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh. We have a motion and a second. Please explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. House Bill 53 renews the TDOT Litter Grant Program. The Litter Grant was authorized in 1980 and funded by the excise tax on beer and the gross receipts tax on bottled soft drinks. The funding on this program will expire without the renewal. $6 to $8 million is collected each year to fund the TDOT Litter Grant, in which each county receives litter pickup grants ranging from $44,000 to $269,000. Since inception, 23 million pounds of litter has been collected in all 95 counties, with 9.2 million pounds of litter has been recycled. I'll answer any
Are
questions.
there any questions for Speaker Pro Tem? We have a question on the bill. Seeing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 53, moving on to calendar and rules. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to calendar and rules.
Thank you.
And Speaker Pro Tem, we like you so much, we're going to keep you up there and let you move on to the next item on our calendar, House Bill 54. We have a motion and a second. Would you like to tell us about your bill, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 54 comes from the Tennessee Underground Utility Damage Enforcement Board. The board is charged with examining data regarding underground utility damages and making recommendations to the General Assembly to update the law. This bill represents recommended changes to the law to improve safety, reduce damage to underground utilities, and achieve compliance with federal rules and regulations. With that, I'll answer any questions.
You've heard the sponsor's explanation. Are there questions for the sponsor? Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can you give me some specifics about what this actually is changing in the present situation with contractors that use the one-call system?
Speaker Marsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know exactly what it does with contractors. It puts us in compliance with the federal law, which if you do damage certain utilities and underground utilities, there are bigger fines to be paid. I don't know that there's many changes to what we're doing currently with the 811 call, all of the different things, the rules that we're doing currently. I think it's mainly with getting us in compliance with the feds.
Are there other questions of the sponsor? Question has been called. With no objection, we're voting on House Bill 54. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 54 moves on to calendar and rules. The next item on our calendar is House Bill 86 by Chairman Howell. We have a motion and a second. Chairman Howell, if you would explain your bill for us, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is an administration bill brought to me by the Department of Revenue, and it updates 4 of Tennessee's vehicle title and registration laws. They're primarily technical changes and brings us in compliance with federal regulations.
Question has been called. Seeing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 86. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 86 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And
Our next item is House Bill 999 by Chairman Love. We have a motion and a second. Chairman Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you, members. House Bill 0999 requires each state agency to submit on or before February the 1st of each year a report to the members of the Finance, Ways and Means Committee summarizing amounts of federal block grants and purposes for which funds were expended, including any unexpended or returned portions. Members, this bill came through this committee last year, passed out, got to the House floor, actually passed the House floor, but because of our COVID restrictions, it did not get taken up by the Senate. So this will give us an opportunity to know what departments may have left in federal funds they receive. With that, Chair Lady, I open for questions.
You've heard the explanation from the sponsor. Are there questions? Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 999. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 999 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chair Lady and members.
We'll give our sanitation process a second, and we'll ask Chairman Moon to be moving to the microphone for item number 6 on our calendar. We have a motion and a second. Chairman Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the members. I'm here today with Administration Bill, Department of Military. It's an update to the Strong Act, and it
We have a motion and a second.
currently, the Strong Act provides 120 hours, semester hours of tuition reimbursement for our National Guard, Army, and Air components. The update provides 40 hours toward a master's degree and 24 hours toward TCAT certificate programs. It also puts mandatory fees as part of the definition of tuition. But why I'm really before you today, this act would sunset June 30th, 2021, and this bill would extend it to 2025.
You've heard the explanation from the sponsor. Are there questions? I just want to say, Mr. Sponsor, thank you for bringing this bill. I think this act helps the folks who take care of us to be able to further their education and helps us to meet our goal of having an educated workforce in Tennessee. So thank you for bringing it. We're voting on House Bill 83. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 83 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
The next item on our calendar, House Bill 539, the sponsor has asked to roll that 1 week, so we will roll that 1 week. Item 8, House Bill 461 by Representative Reedy. Representative Reedy, you're recognized. You have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the ground ambulance assessment extension for another year.
Question on the bill.
The question has been called. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 461 moves to calendar and rules.
Madam Chair.
Item number 9 on our calendar, House Bill 657. Chairman Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a
motion. We have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bill that updates the local government finance statutes, removes outdated terms, it modernizes language, eliminates provisions that have sunset. It simplifies borrowing procedures, increases transparency, and updates refinancing procedures. I want to add that Section 21E of the bill does not impact existing or future outstanding obligations of cities or counties where the original documentation for such obligations contains specific language that contemplates a modification of the interest rate at any time during their existence. Members, this bill contains 23 sections. If you'll point me to the sections you're most interested in, I'll be glad to provide additional details.
The question has been called. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 657. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. House Bill 657 moves to calendar and rules. Item number 10 on our calendar, House Bill 1191 by Representative Garrett. We have a motion and a second. Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is a bill that requires, or at least signifies, that those of us that have a professional license, like lawyers, brokers, contractors, CPAs, et cetera, when those nonprofit associations provides continuing education courses, those courses now, a lot of them are done by video. And there was a revenue ruling not too long ago that said this might be a digital good and they have to collect sales tax on that. Obviously, we don't want that good since it's mainly folks that are in live presentations that then look at these presentations later. This bill says that's not a digital good for sales tax collection purposes. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
And Representative Garrett, we do have an amendment on that bill from Finance Subcommittee, drafting code 004013. I have a motion and a second on the amendment. You're recognized on the amendment.
And the amendment, thank you, committee, for that reminder, and the amendment makes the bill. So any further explanation?
Do we have any questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 1191 as amended, moving on to calendar and rules. Oh, I'm sorry. We've attached the amendment. We have to, do we vote on the amendment? All right. I thought we voted on the amendment, but suppose we didn't. So all those in favor of the amendment 004013, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment is attached. Now we're voting on House Bill 1191 as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 1191 moves to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee.
Item number 11 on our calendar is House Bill 1011 by Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Chair Lady Hazelwood.
We have a motion and a second. And I believe there is an amendment on this bill as well, Chairman Hicks.
That is correct.
I have drafting code 005371.
That is it.
All right, is there a motion on the amendment? We have a motion and a second. Chairman Hicks, you're recognized on the amendment.
The amendment actually makes the bill, and it's simply, this legislation offsets return due dates for state and federal returns by extending the state return window by 30 days.
All right, you've heard the explanation of the amendment. We're voting on the amendment 005371. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The few ayes have it. I'll add an aye to that list. The ayes have it. The amendment is hereby attached. And now we're moving on to House Bill 1011 as amended. And I believe that the amendment made the bill.
That is correct.
So are there any questions of the chairman on this bill as amended? Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 1011. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 1011 moves on to calendar and rules. The last item on our calendar is roll 2 weeks. So with that, we have completed today's calendar, and we will go out of session and hear from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Welcome, gentlemen. We're glad to have you here, and I hope you enjoyed watching our committee at work while you waited.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are glad to be here. Thank you for taking the time to hear our budget presentation. What we would like to do is walk through a short presentation and then be available for any questions. With me today at the table is Andy Summer, who serves as our CFO. To my left is Denise Thomas, who's our Deputy Commissioner. And to her left is Abby Hudgens, who is the administrator for the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. We also have members of our team with us to help us answer any questions after the presentation, if we may proceed.
Please do, and your goals match ours, a brief presentation with time for questions. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Just as an overview of the department overall, our proposed budget is $210 million. 75% of that is federal. There's a large percentage that's dedicated as well. So we have about $25 million in state funds that is discretionary. As we know, the health crisis of COVID also created an economic crisis, which drove unemployment insurance claims up. Just a few numbers, we experienced a 2,500% increase in about a 4-week period from March to April. Over the summer, those claims remained historically high. During the fall, we saw a decline as the economy got better and we implemented reemployment efforts across the state. But over the last 3 months, we've also had 2 more rounds of extended and modified federal programs, which have also contributed to helping those claims numbers drive back up near the end of the year and, of course, at the beginning of this year as well. Just to put a final point on where we've been, typically in a year, we would distribute $200 million of unemployment insurance. This past year, we've distributed $6.3 billion of unemployment insurance. So quite the increase there. Without spending too much time on the impact to our organization as a whole, we, of course, had to address the health crisis with our own people and also the economic crisis. So we redeployed many of our resources, sent them home to work on unemployment insurance. But as we staffed and continue to staff to meet the challenge, we've also been able to bring all of those services back online. I will note that we've learned a lot along the way. For example, in our adult ed program, we have a whole lot more virtual ability than we did before, just because we were forced to do it, just like K-12 was. In terms of, and this is always something that we need to keep an eye on, in terms of the unemployment trust fund, we went in with to the crisis with 2 goals. One was the solvency of the unemployment trust fund, so we could continue to pay benefits. The second was we needed to look forward as well, because those benefits are funded by employers, and we wanted to look toward the recovery as we work through the crisis. And so we were able to, with the Federal Stimulus Accountability Group, we were able to make some investments and continue to keep Tennessee employers paying the lowest tax rate for their unemployment insurance possible, which allows them to hire at a lower rate than they would have had we not done that. In terms of our reductions and in the budget this year, I'm going to turn it over to Andy Summer, who's again our CFO, to walk you through those.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You'll see our fiscal year 21 vacancy reductions on slide 7. We had 13 positions this year for a total of state savings of $373,000. Some of those divisions are listed. In our administration division, we had 2 positions. In our occupational and safety and health division, we had 4 positions, 5 positions in workers' compensation, and 2 positions in our boilers and elevators and amusement device division. We're now at a total position count of 1,235, down from 1,248 last year. And these vacancy reductions did not disrupt any services provided to Tennesseans. Slide 8, this is our fiscal year 22 budget reduction plan. Total state savings is $2.8 million. The first bullet point relates to subsequent injury fund related to the workers' compensation division. That's for $1.6 million. This aligns our appropriation with our actual expenditure. Second bullet point is related to $350,000 for our adult education program. That relates to our local grants. Third bullet point is $655,000 in our administration division. These are internal service funds that we were able to reduce and transition some of those SDS costs over to our federal divisions. So being able to offset some of those state expenses with federal revenue. And $40,000 for mines. This is related to our rent. This is switching from state cost to federal cost. And then we have $155,000 in our workers' compensation division. And this is a lease that ends in September that we will not be renewing, and also 2 additional FTEs. So that's a total of 7 positions in workers' compensation from the previous slide.
I'm now going to ask Abby Hudgens and Denise Thomas to walk through our requested increases.
And if you would just identify yourself for the record.
I'm not sure you can hear. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm Abby Hudgens. I'm the administrator of the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. We have asked for additional funding for a consultant for the annual review of the workers' compensation medical fee schedule, which is required by law. The goal of the annual review is to balance the need for access to quality care and to control cost at the same time. We have about 1.4 million transactions that involves $240 million in expenses in a typical year. And so it's quite an expenditure that we need to be careful about. Maintaining this balance has been increasingly difficult without having access to national workers' compensation medical data and group health plan data. This is data that a consultant can provide. Nearby states such as Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Kentucky have all engaged a consultant for the same purpose and have found it to be very worthwhile. We also, I would say that the state has a provision already, the state law, that authorizes the use of such an expert. So that is the outline of our proposal. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Denise Thomas, Deputy Commissioner with the department. The second increase is in the apprenticeship program. Over the course of the pandemic, the last year or so, we continue to see a need for apprenticeship expansion in our state. We've experienced a little under a 30% increase in the number of apprentices. We continue to have a vast demand from businesses to train and skill their workforce. And so the $2 million would allow us to create Tennessee Apprenticeship TN that would give us the staff that we need to assist businesses both in the creation and also the expansion of apprenticeship programs. To date, we have a little over 7,000. This is a significant high for Tennessee since we've been able to track that data with our federal partners. The third is our reentry employment initiative. This is also in the amount of $2 million. This allows our department the ability to sustain a re-entry program to support those who are incarcerated and also those who are formerly incarcerated, to begin workforce development programs and training. So upon release, these individuals can become a viable part of the workforce. We've relied on federal funding in the past. That's often fragmented because we do have to wait for those grant opportunities to present themselves. This will allow us to have a state vision and a state plan to ensure that these individuals can return and work and continue to be productive citizens. With that, Commissioner McCord, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, that's our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner McCord. We appreciate both the information and the brevity with which you presented it. And we do have several questions on our list, beginning with Chairman Baum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a question about one of the items you mentioned, the reemployment initiatives. I believe the budget contains a $2 million grant that would fund a partnership between Labor and Workforce Development and the Department of Corrections for folks who are recently incarcerated. How will those funds be used?
Thank you for your question. So we will use these funds to provide what we call participant services. So this will include a variety of things, depending on the assessment of the individuals that are due to be released or recently released. It could include training, paid classroom training. It could also cover on-the-job training costs for individuals that are looking to get into the workforce. And this would really subsidize the training wage for employers to up to 50%. So it could be utilized for that. It also provides supportive services such as if there's any tools, uniforms, transportation, or any costs needed for the person to return to work. So it really depends on the assessment of the need of the individual.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, certainly.
just add to that. I think it's important to know that TDOC is not making this ask. We're making this ask as one ask and partnering with TDOC to make this ask. And it's coming to us to make the ask because we have infrastructure to integrate it into already, as opposed to them trying to build it themselves.
Okay, sorry, thank
Chairman
you.
Baum?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, that makes sense. Do you know approximately how many formerly incarcerated individuals the program can serve, and maybe what percent of the formerly incarcerated inmates this would represent?
So our initial estimates for this, which we'll obviously use as a demonstration to determine the capacity of the department, in working with the Department of Corrections, the need is vast. And this certainly will not be able to serve all those individuals. The projected cost is based on an estimate of 250 participants where we see the greatest need. That is on an average participant cost of a little over $4,000. Depending on what's needed, we could serve more or less. So the goal is that we will do this and then assess as we continue the program.
Chairman Baum?
Thank you. Just one last question. After this program has been initiated for a time, how will you measure its success?
So the initial indicators are how well we can get someone back to work and earning a sustainable wage. Coupled with the data from Department of Corrections, obviously we'll look at things like, does this in any way impact recidivism? But those will be long-term objectives and indicators that we'll look at. But our immediate measurements, if we can get these folks in the classroom or back to work.
And just a follow-up question on that. Are you working with businesses? Do you have partnerships set up with businesses who are open to employing the formerly incarcerated?
Yes, ma'am, we do. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, we do. We are working with businesses and we're looking to expand that relationship as well. This allows us to really package a variety of services the department has, such as things like federal bonding and tax credits. So we're looking to be able to provide a realized benefit to businesses who want to employ these individuals, but we also recognize the need that not only do they want to hire them, they also need to be trained. So we want to make sure that we have a ready trained workforce as well. We find there are better outcomes with businesses when that occurs.
Thank you. Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I want to ask a question about the Unemployment Trust Fund. As a state, we've added $939 million to the Unemployment Trust Fund from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. The balance as of December 31st, 2020 was $1,128,256. What is the current balance as of now of March?
Andy, can you answer? We can answer that.
Yes, the balance as of the end of February was $1.098 billion.
Thank you. Do you anticipate we will need additional funds to keep this balance over $1 billion to avoid unemployment tax rise?
So if I may, Madam Chair, I'll take that one, Andy. No, we don't. We have a 3-year projection from the Boyd Center, Dr. Fox, who testifies often. Then we use them. The department has them, a contract with them to help us with these projections. And unless I'm wrong, Andy, I believe the last projection saw us 3 years out as far as they go, that we are going to be there for 3 more years. Of course, they're always revising that But we feel really good about this year, and then it gets a little less certain as the years go out.
And
Chairman
Madam Chair,
Crawford?
my final question, kind of changing direction a little bit. How quickly are people able to apply now? And is there still a significant backlog?
So the answer, Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
thank you. I'm catching the rhythm. So we have started today paying the American Rescue Act funds. So this is the second wave of claims that we have, or excuse me, the second wave of federal programs we've had just this year. And there is a backlog, but the flip side of that coin is our unemployment rate continues to drop. The last reading, I believe, was 5.1%. And so we are, and we're, with this last implementation, we'll have some stability that we can begin to make the process improvement. But we're all also equally active, if not more active, in moving folks back to work with the improving economic conditions that we see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner. Thank you.
Chairman Hicks?
Thank you, Chair Lady. Commissioner McCord, it's certainly good to see you. And I feel like I've been a part of unemployment here in the past couple months with the constituent services that I think everybody's has provided. So, but thank you all for your timely response in almost all cases. One point I do want to bring up, though, is the insurance benefit tax system. Last year, some monies were appropriated, I think, to the tune of about $41.7 million for a replacement of that system. Can you give us a status of that and maybe moving forward? Well, just a status first.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you. So yes, right at $42 million was appropriated. And we saw the need to do that at low volumes. And we're not convinced otherwise at high volumes. And so where we are, there's really two basic pieces of an unemployment insurance system. There's the tax piece, which employers pay into. We currently have a 35-year-old system that functions in that effort. And then there's the benefit system. So they have to go together. So we have done an RFI on the tax side and are releasing an RFP within, I think I'm looking around to get some help, within weeks, it's not months, to begin to move forward on that. We are obviously organizationally, we're strained, and a lot of the same people who would be implementing a new system would be working through the system and serving people that we have now, but still we're making progress. So we're going to make the progress. And from a systems perspective, it makes sense to do the tax side anyway first, because you lay that base. And for us, we have a 35-year-old system functioning. And just as an aside, we couldn't send people home to work from home because that system, you had to be actually in the office to do the system. So working on tax, we'll be working on the benefits in short order after. Those two will overlap.
What is the time frame for full implementation? How long of a process is this going to take?
Well, Madam Chair, I want to answer your question directly, but the whole industry is different than it was when we requested the funding. Quite frankly, we don't know who's still going to be around or what lawsuits will happen. The whole industry is disrupted. We're going to proceed and pursue our effort to do that, but we're still a few years out from just the RFP process in itself to see who's still left standing is going to take some time.
So with that much time in between, is the 41.7, 42 million, is that going to be sufficient enough to cover the full implementation, or is?
So, Madam Chair, that is a very good question, and I can't provide you an accurate answer yet. We're gonna move through this implementation and these RFPs and see where we are. And quite frankly, all options are on the table, including looking at, can we do this internally? What are our options here with that money? again, I would be able to give you a better answer if we just knew the state of the industry and what the players were that we were thinking about beforehand.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Thank you.
Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. This goes back to the apprenticeship program, the $2 million. I got a couple questions here, so bear with me. I was just curious, how many of those apprenticeships are currently being offered? Like number, percentage? And then I know you said that there's a 30% increase. What is that number as well?
Madam Chair. So we currently have 7,009 apprentices currently, and that's spread over, I believe, and I'll get you exact figures, a little over 300 programs, registered programs. So some of those numbers indicate number of apprentices that are already moving into existing approved programs, and then also newer programs that have been approved. And I think we have a couple of maybe 20 or so. And again, we'll provide exact figures to this body, but on programs that have been approved over the course of the last year. So even though it's been a little bit of instability in economic and workforce recovery, we are seeing a steady rise for the need for apprenticeship programs. So we're trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve. So those are preliminary numbers, but we can get you exact figures.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, if we add this $2 million in the current budget, how much does that bring the total to recently for this program?
So, Madam Chair, if I may, we're behind, quite frankly. Our border states are ahead of us in making this investment and from a workforce development, economic development investment. And so we have been doing this stop and start with federal grants and hard to find continuity in doing that. We will certainly look to augment any investment with additional grants. We are seeing, even during the COVID-19 disruption, we are incredibly surprised, quite frankly, excited, but surprised at the level of demand that there is for this way of learning and going about and of being able to progress in skills and get paid while you progress in skills. And we're going to start them as early as we possibly can. We're start them in high school to get moving on that track. So a lot of pent-up demand. I answered your question a lot longer than your question, but
Representative Gillespie.
One more. You kind of touched on this, so go ahead and ask anyway. You mentioned federal grants. Do you have enough people right now working on that, or are those grants out there and it's just a problem of applying?
No, Madam Chair, we have a grant department that is vigilant in looking for alternative funding, and we do have enough people doing that.
And just a follow-up question on the apprentice programs. I know I represent part of Hamilton County, and there's some great apprenticeship programs for high school students there. Gestamp comes to mind. Volkswagen, I think, has some programs. So of those apprenticeships that you mentioned earlier, did those include those high school programs, the numbers that you gave us?
Absolutely. And we want to see more of those. We often reference Gestamp as a model for particularly youth apprenticeships. And so the hope is that we could not just continue to drive the formal youth apprenticeships at Gestamp, but also pre-apprenticeships for those who are still in high school, but looking for alternative tracks. Also apprenticeship in non-traditional categories in healthcare industry and IT, for example. We're limited to do that to the previous question because of the federal grants amounts are often capped.
All right, thank you. I do know I've visited Gestamp. I've seen those programs in action, and those young people are going right out of high school and going back to the same place they've been doing their apprenticeship and getting, a family wage, again, right out of high school. So it's an impressive program. Chairman Wendell.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, I've just got one question, and this is an offline question, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. If you could get me an answer sometime in the next couple of days. I've had 50 to 100 phone calls from constituents who have been laid off specifically as a result of the effects of COVID-19. It says that in the layoff slip. Excuse me. They have a callback date. Here's your layoff slip. We're going to bring you back online to make this carport part on April the 1st. So I've been laid off, but I'm going to bring you back to work. They've applied for unemployment benefits. Could you please research and provide me an answer? Does that person have to seek employment for the 1, 2, or 3 weeks that these people are off work pending a definite recall? And I'm not trying to blindside you today because that's not fair to you, but I've got so many calls on that specific issue, and I'm not a subject matter expert, but I represent those people. And if you could have somebody from your department give me some guidance that I can provide to the employees at this specific car plant or car part plant as to whether or not they must seek alternate employment in order to receive federal and state benefits. And Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your patience on that question. I appreciate it.
And Commissioner, if you would, I'm assuming that Chairman Wendell is probably not the only one who's getting questions like that. So if you would just share that with my office and we'll distribute it, the response to the committee as a whole.
And again, thank you for letting me ask that question. I appreciate it personally.
You're welcome. Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Chair Lady, and appreciate the Commissioner being here and your staff. Y'all do a really good job. You've been under a lot of tough times in the last year, and you've risen to the call, and we're all of us have been calling. So I appreciate your efforts there. I wanted to see if you could help me understand and distinguish between state benefits and these enhanced federal benefits when it relates to reasons for unemployment. So if someone is let go for cause, are they still eligible for the federal portion or not?
Madam Chair, no, they should not be. And I put should there. The federal programs have the eligibility is a lot broader. And we've, the self-attestation ability is there as well. But to answer your question directly, for cause, they should not know.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So trying to think of I get a lot of questions from business owners, and obviously across the state, we've got a lot of vacant positions. Even with that unemployment rate, there are a lot of folks that need folks to fill these positions, and I'm seeing that every day. And so what is the maximum benefit, if you have that number of state benefit and federal together? Obviously, it's dependent on their wage and their normal work course, but just what is the maximum that you'd be looking at?
So I think right now, and I'm going to look back and I'm going to say a number, but I think we're at 77 weeks. Yeah. So I can stack those benefits, state, move to enhanced, move to more, a second round, and then we've just entered a third round that will take us to September 4th.
Chairman Todd.
And I was really I appreciate that answer because I needed to know that too, but the dollar figure, what is the maximum dollar figure per week someone would get under the?
So in the federal programs also include an additional $300 a week. And our weekly maximum benefit amount right now is $275. And so those would be the $575 or thereabouts would be the amount.
Chairman Todd, did you have another question? Okay. Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's been tough, I know, for you and your staff, and I just want to thank y'all, and also thank our staff, our LAs, who have worked really hard to help represent our office and kind of help connect the dots. I see you're an author. Is that right?
Oh, well, the books aren't exactly flying off the shelves, but
nice.
yeah.
What's the name of the book?
It's Awkward Grace.
Yeah. ironically, we passed Amazing Grace in naming and designating this morning. So kind of some coincidence. I wanted to ask about apprenticeships in the tech industry and what you're seeing with there and any partnerships that's going on.
So if I may, we have announcement for our first graduation, I believe in April, from a company, I'm gonna look to Denise, called Assurion. And so I think that's a very good question. Part of our learning is it's not, you think of a manufacturing or just that, or construction as being, but the issue we're having as a state, first of all, is skilled workforce, but second, how do you adjust when the automation comes? And so when automation comes, usually those first 2 or 3 levels of jobs go away. And so how do you get somebody who used to hire as entry level, how do you get them to that skilled level? And really the answer is apprenticeship, whether it's IT or whether it's healthcare, or quite frankly, whether it's education. How do you get those, what is that pathway? And so again, we are behind as a state and need to catch up. And we see it with this pent up demand, not just from our traditional industries.
Representative Sparks?
Madam Chair, if I could, another question as far as workforce development. One of the things complaints I'm hearing from small business owners is just lack of, drive, lack of teenagers wanting to come into and just work. Are you seeing that? And how do we even address that as a society?
So yes, sir. So one of the things in partnership with education that we're really excited to get back to, and we've made a lot of strides before, is workplace learning. I think we all learn to work by working. And if we get a young person engaged in work at 16 years old, a lot of good things happen and a lot of bad things don't. And give them a path and open up their eyes to what might be. And so we don't have them wander in the wilderness for years trying to figure out where to go or what to do. And so actually, that's one of the things we're most excited about, reaching back earlier and giving those pathways in combination with the Department of Education.
Thanks, sir.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, and your team. 2 questions. One around the unemployment and all of the claims, and we had to redo our system, and you all went through carefully to hire an additional 30 people to try to move the claims. There was a backlog for a long period of time, and I imagine you all have made some progress with that. Could you give us an update to some degree on this background? We still get people calling saying, it's been 9 months or it's been 6 months, and they still haven't received anything.
Yes, ma'am. So what we're running into now is, as people have been on unemployment for a year, and when you're on unemployment for a year, you're required by federal law to reapply. And so all those folks who have been on a year are now having to reapply, which is adding to the backlog, because basically we're recycling those in addition to whatever new ones are coming in, and it's creating that backlog.
Thank you for
Leader Camper.
Thank you for that response. I'm concerned about those who are still on the list and not receiving their benefits, although others are recertifying after having received some for over a year. We still have people that are just still kind of waiting. And I know you all have been working real hard. Commissioner, you've been very good about responding when we email you about creating a ticket for our constituents. But I imagine some of them are just really difficult. So I'm more interested in that group, not those who are reapplying, those that are still in the chute,
right,
that have not received any benefits and are losing everything and really trying to manage it from, just keeping their state of mind together.
So we do still have that backlog as well. And one of the things, so to your point, we've onboarded over 600, probably close to 700 people in the last 12 months. That's never going to be enough. And so one of the things too that we have coming on and really starting to make progress on automation tools. so that we can take care of the easy ones, no matter the easier ones, no matter how old they are, so that we can have the people actually interface with the harder ones. And so we should see with this last program being implemented, and we don't see another program coming, and the automation tools that we have and the people that we've onboarded really start to make some progress.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. Were there some funds that you received through the CARES dollars that weren't expended that we had to extend, or did we have to send them back? Was there any CARES dollars that we did not use that we maybe got an extension on, or did we return them, or anything like that?
I believe, and I'll look to Andy, and let him help me answer this, but I believe the answer is no. We used a lot for the trust fund, and there was some additional that we used, not nearly the quantity for some workforce development programs, but in terms of ours, either fully expended or almost fully expended.
Yeah, our CARES funding is for 3 years, so we carry forward those funds for future years.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
I have no further questions on my list. So Commissioner Cord, we thank you and your team for being here today. And as has been mentioned multiple times, we know it's been a challenging year for Tennesseans. It's been a challenging year for your department as you try to serve those Tennesseans. And it's been challenging for us as we deal with constituents who have, for whatever reason, because of complicated claims or inability to get into the system or whatever, who've been kind of left behind, as Leader Camper alluded to. And we all recognize that those are real people whose, those dollars can make a difference in whether they're able to maintain their home and feed their children and all those things. So I know that you're working as fast and as hard as you can. We would just only urge you to go faster and work harder and get through the backlog as quickly as possible. But we do appreciate all that's been done. And I know hopefully when you've onboarded, as you said, a lot of new employees, and there is a learning curve. And hopefully we're getting to the point where those folks are going to be more productive and will help cut into that backlog as well. But thank you. And thank you for also looking forward to we're not going to always be in this pandemic situation. And so looking at things like apprenticeships and the programs to help those who have been incarcerated lead productive lives and have jobs, that benefits all of us in the state as well. So thank you for your hard work and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
With that, committee, we are back in session. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing none, we're adjourned. It's happy hour somewhere.